Thank you very much, Sister Joanne. And I'm delighted to be here at Wisdom House. I can't think of a better place to show illustrations that reflect my experiences with hospice than here at Wisdom House. So thank you. I'm an industrial designer. I worked with some of the most uninteresting things in the world, including power generation equipment. That was one of my specialties. And it was a year and a half ago that I first got involved with hospice. One of the first things that strikes you is, I don't know anything about this. It's almost overwhelming to start with. And I responded visually because that's who I am. I've always done things visually. Responding visually, I'm not prepared for it. But so what's my background? What were my influences in art? And I've got two columns there. On the left are some of the traditional influences that I primarily got through art school. But Gauguin, I remember sitting in an aunt's house and she had some Gauguin prints as a little kid. I loved them. And Salvador Dali, as a little kid, Life magazine would have spreads of his work. I loved it. In high school, on the other right, I got, as a kid in California, I loved cars. Every little kid was corrupted by cars. I spent high school drawing cars. And I was going to be a car designer. But Sputnik got shut up, and they needed scientists and engineers, and they said, that's un-American to be a car designer, you need to be a scientist or engineer. So I started in physics. But happily, I ended up marrying my wife back here, and I had 2 kids. So I worked in a research lab, and eventually got back to college, at California College of Arts. And by then, I had a love for art, but it involved a lot of things like Frank Lloyd Wright. I don't know who's ever seen the Marin County Civic Center. It's gorgeous, and I remember the first time we walked in there, wow, what an experience to see that place. And but Gaudi, I also like Art Nouveau. So when I got to school, the design department, the head of that, had originally been trained at Bauhaus. And I loved that. I was terribly excited by Olivetti designs. I don't know if any of you remember. Olivetti, Ettore Satsas was a marvelous industrial designer. I thought he was great. Here are these things that I'd learned, my background, and so here I'm reacting to what's in front of me in hospice. And obviously, that's an emotional reaction. To me, a classic emotional response is a scream. I didn't know really how to go about doing that. How badly my brain was working at the time. It was tied to things. Here was my first art school project. It was terrible. I hated the instructor, Sister Joanne. We really disliked each other because I had a way, with a science background, I wanted to go from A to Z. In retrospect, I look at what I gained in art school, and obviously all the materials and methods are totally different now. But at that time, he was a little, I was 26, he was probably 30. And I thought, he's telling me what to do? And it turns out, what did he tell me to do? Look at what is in front of you. Listen to what you see. and others call that the Painterly method or whatever. And that's the primary takeaway that I got from college. I spent a lot of years on things. So how do I find a way to visually respond with what I'm seeing with patients, caregivers, and family members? End-of-life issues are not handled easily in our country. To do that, I obviously took advantage of the tools and techniques I'd already been using. I've been doing marketing animations for General Electric in a lot of different areas for trade show. I had the tools and techniques that around about the early 90s, you went from doing things by hand to doing things by computer. And I applied the thing that I learned in that class that I hated the instructor, which is listen to what you see. My process is, as any artist typically uses, I do a lot of thumbnail sketches. I can't find flare pens anymore, but I always loved flare pens, particularly ones that were a little bit dry. And in today's world, so I come up with a concept of what do I want to convey, what's the story that I'm telling. I do the thumbnail sketches, and then I start looking Google Images, and oftentimes I'll go through like 5,000 to 10,000 different images. What rings my bell? There's a lot there. These are not copyrighted images, and copyright law is going all over the place these days. And then the software I use includes Mirage, which is similar to Photoshop in a many-layered thing, but it's actually a video editing program that I've used for a number of years. Lightweight 3D, an animation package, I've also used that for many, many years. So those are the tools. Body paint is used for texturing models that you might make. Lifeforms is another program that has bodies and movements and all sorts of things. The tools are there, they're fantastic, and you can do anything you want. First thing I did was this particular piece, and my immediate first reactions were distressing, depressing, too abstract. That wasn't very encouraging. But it incorporated the types of tools. I've got some 3D models in there. I've got arms that are 3D that are in there, and it's rendered out of lightweight. And I typically am about 5,000 by 4,000 pixel in resolution. And here's so that first one was letting go, because that was before I talked to anybody. And that was the training that hospice gave. And one of the most critical things for a family when somebody goes under hospice care is letting go. You want to do things. You don't want to give up. Hospice isn't giving up. Hospice is recognizing that the comfort and care that somebody receives is more important than the treatment that might be forced upon them that is of little value and is only going to make their life difficult. So one of the areas that I felt I was uncomfortable visiting somebody was with dementia. So the first, I had another volunteer suggest to me that I could go with her to visit three of her people she was seeing in a nursing home. And this particular woman had advanced Alzheimer's. I call it still inside. She had beautiful eyes, and there was she inside those eyes. She couldn't really converse, but there was a lot there. And so my view changed, and this is my first story. Somebody with dementia. They're not gone, they're there. The second fellow I was given, it was a very dysfunctional family. He had original family from Virginia. He had a common law wife here, I'm saying in Amsterdam. And in that home there were 4 generations of people. An adult child was a drug addict and would steal his medication. So it was rough. However, he was like a rock, which is the story I'm saying here. The 2 families, the one from Virginia got up there at one point. They wanted to take him back to Virginia because, again, the one letting go. A family doesn't want to let somebody go. It's hard. And they wanted to, so there was yelling and screaming going on when I arrived one day. His 2 original daughters were there. They wanted him to come back. I don't know how we got through it, but he was a rock, and I just sat with him while all this commotion went on. During the funeral, the 2 families, the tensions that had existed were gone. He had passed, and they got along. It was affirming to see that happen.